I was standing 14 feet from my new husband when his voice came through every speaker in the reception hall saying, "Denise doesn't even know what real passion feels like. You ruined me for her, Keisha." 211 guests. His mother mid-bite into a crab cake. His boss holding a glass of Veuve Clicquot that I paid for. My maid of honor, the Keisha in question, frozen at table 6 with her fiancé's hand on her thigh and guilt crawling across her face, like a weather system. Marcus turned to look at me across the dance floor. His boutonniere was crooked. That's the detail I remember. $14,000 in floral arrangements, and nobody could pin a damn flower straight. I smiled at him. A real smile. The first honest one I'd worn in 4 months. And then his voice kept going. Through every speaker, through every Bluetooth channel I'd routed through the venue's PA system the night before, during, setup. Through the portable Bose units I'd placed under the sweetheart table, the gift table, and the bar. There was a lunchbox on the audio text table. A Spider-Man lunchbox. It wasn't for a child. It was holding a wireless transmitter, a 64 gig flash drive, and 2 months of audio files I'd cleaned, spliced, and organized with the same precision I use to produce podcasts that get 12 million downloads a month. But this story doesn't start at a wedding reception in Charlotte, North Carolina, on October 14th, 2023. It starts 2 years before that, in a recording booth the size of a walk-in closet, with a woman who thought being quiet meant being safe. That woman was me. My name is Denise Calloway, 33 years old. Audio engineer at Larkin Signal, a podcast production studio in Raleigh, North Carolina. I make $78,000 a year editing other people's confessions, true crime narratives, and emotional tell-alls for a living. The irony of that is not lost on me. I spent my career helping strangers tell the truth, while the 2 people closest to me lied to my face every single day. I grew up on the east side of Raleigh, off New Bern Avenue, in a neighborhood where everyone knew everyone's car by the sound of its engine. My mother, Glenda, raised me and my younger brother, Terrence, alone after my father decided that a family was a hobby he'd outgrown when I was 7. He didn't leave dramatically, he just stopped showing up. Tuesdays became every other Tuesday, then monthly, then a birthday card in March, even though my birthday is in June. My mother worked 2 jobs. Front desk at a dermatology clinic during the day, inventory at a FedEx warehouse 3 nights a week. We weren't poor, but we were precise. She'd count items at the grocery store and do mental math before the cashier could scan the last barcode. I learned from her that survival was a math problem, and if you solved it carefully enough, nobody had to know you were barely passing. My grandmother, Opal, lived 4 blocks over. She watched me and Terrence every afternoon, fed us butter beans and cornbread, and had this way of saying things that sounded simple until you lived long enough to realize they were surgical. Her favorite, "Don't show your hand until the table thinks you folded." She said it playing spades. She said it when my mom was dealing with the landlord. She said it when I came home crying in 5th grade because a boy named Darius told everyone I was ugly, and I wanted to scream at him in front of the whole cafeteria. Grandma Opal just looked at me over her reading glasses and said, "Baby, don't show your hand until the table thinks you folded." I didn't understand it then. I thought she was telling me to be quiet, to take it, to swallow. She wasn't. She was teaching me to wait. There's something about working in audio that changes how you experience the world. You start hearing layers. You hear the hum of a refrigerator behind a conversation. You hear the micropause before someone lies, that half-second gap where the brain is constructing instead of remembering. I hear breath patterns, ambient shifts, tonal changes that most people filter out without thinking. I trained my ear for 8 years in studios and edit bays, and that skill, that compulsive obsessive listening, is the reason I'm sitting here today telling you this instead of still smiling at a Thanksgiving table while my mother-in-law tells me I should try harder. It's also the reason I found the recordings, but I'll get to that. One more thing about me, and I promise this matters later. In 2020, during the pandemic, I helped my Uncle Vernon rewire the audio system in his church on Poole Road. New PA, new Bluetooth routing, new wireless mic setup, the whole thing. I learned how to map a speaker system in any building, how to override factory presets, and how to route audio from a hidden source to every connected output in a venue simultaneously. Uncle Vernon paid me in pulled pork and gratitude. I never imagined I'd use that skill set again. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about a lot of things. My dream since I was 22 was to launch my own podcast, not produce someone else's, mine. A show about women who survived impossible situations and rebuilt. I had the name picked out. After the burning, I had a logo sketched in a notebook. I had 60 pages of notes. Marcus told me it was a cute idea. Cute was the word he used when he meant not serious enough for me to take seriously. I shelved it. Put the notebook in a drawer. Remember that notebook. Remember that drawer. And then I met Marcus Calloway. And for the first time in my adult life, I thought I'd found someone who saw me, actually saw me, and thought I was enough. I was wrong. I was catastrophically, humiliatingly, expensively wrong. We met at a friend's cookout in Durham, July 2021. 94 degrees, the kind of North Carolina heat that makes the air feel like wet velvet. He was standing by the grill arguing about basketball with 3 other guys, and he was losing the argument but winning the crowd. Loud, confident, funny in that way, where everyone around him felt funnier too. He was wearing a Duke hat and a linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He had a laugh that started in his chest. When he turned and looked at me, he said, "You've been standing there for 10 minutes and haven't said a word. That means you're either shy or smarter than everyone here." I said, "Both." He laughed, handed me a plate he'd already made, ribs, coleslaw, cornbread. "I made you a plate because you looked like you weren't going to make yourself one." That was the first red flag, by the way. Not the plate, the assumption. He decided what I needed before asking. I thought it was chivalry. It was a preview. The first 6 months were the kind of good that makes you stupid. He texted me every morning. "Good morning, beautiful," at 6:47 a.m., so consistent I could set my alarm by it. He brought me Thai food from that place on Glenwood Avenue because I mentioned once that I liked basil rolls. He sat in the parking lot of Larkin Signal for 45 minutes waiting for me to finish a late edit because he didn't want me driving home alone at midnight. We watched cooking competition shows on his couch every Sunday. He'd put my feet in his lap. He'd argue with the judges. He'd say, "When we get married, we're having a cooking competition at the reception." He used to leave sticky notes on my bathroom mirror. Beautiful. Mine. Lucky me. I found out later that Keisha got the same notes. Different mirror. Same handwriting. Same dollar store Post-its. Yellow. The kind you buy in a 12-pack at Office Depot. He didn't even vary the brand. Keisha Monroe. My best friend since 4th grade at Lockhart Elementary. Brand. The girl who braided my hair at sleepovers, who held my hand at my grandmother's funeral, who drove 3 hours from Greensboro to Raleigh when I called her crying at 2 a.m. after my first real breakup at 24. She was my maid of honor before Marcus even proposed, because that was never a question. It was always going to be her. And she was sleeping with him before the proposal, before the engagement party, before she helped me pick out my wedding dress at that bridal shop on Falls of Neuse Road, standing behind me in the 3-way mirror saying, "Denise, you look like a queen," while her phone buzzed in her purse with a text from my fiancé. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how the cracks formed. Because they didn't crack loudly. They whispered. 8 months into the relationship, Marcus's phone started going face down. We were eating at a Thai place on Capitol Boulevard. The same basil rolls, the same corner booth, and his phone buzzed. He flipped it over so fast that his elbow knocked his water glass. He laughed it off. "Work stuff, you know how it is." I told myself it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. A month later, he changed his phone password. I know because I watched him type it one night when he thought I was asleep. It used to be 0821, his birthday. The new one was 1114. I didn't know what that date meant then. I learned later it was November 14th. The first time he slept with Keisha, he used their anniversary as his password, on the phone he carried into our bed every night. Then came the criticism. Not brutal, not obvious. Poisoned compliments, served with a smile. At his company's holiday party in December 2022, he introduced me to his regional VP, a man named Garrett with a 2-firm handshake and a Rolex that screamed commission bonus. Marcus put his arm around me and said, "This is my girl Denise. She plays with microphones for a living. Isn't that cute?" I laughed. Everyone laughed. I went to the bathroom and stood in the stall for 4 minutes, breathing. Then, at his mother's house for New Year's dinner, Lorraine Calloway, a woman who treated Grace before meals like a TED Talk, Marcus announced to the table, "Denise is the responsible one. I'm the fun one. Every marriage needs balance, right?" His mother said, "Well, Marcus could have done better, but you try so hard, Denise, and that's sweet." I passed the gravy, smiled. Said thank you. That was the night I should have left. Instead, I said yes when he proposed 3 weeks later, on January 21st, 2023, at the restaurant where we had our first date. He got on one knee. The ring was $1,800. I know because I found the receipt later, and he'd told his mother it was $6,000. The wedding budget was $47,000. Marcus contributed $7,050, the DJ, the groomsmen's gifts, and half the rehearsal dinner. I paid the remaining $39,950 from my savings, from my 401k early withdrawal, from a personal loan at 8.9% interest through my credit union. I was financing my own betrayal. And I was doing it with a spreadsheet color-coded by vendor, because that's the kind of woman I am, the kind who organizes her own destruction in alphabetical order. 4 months before the wedding, June 2023, I was at the studio editing a true crime podcast episode. It was 11:40 p.m. Marcus was asleep at our apartment, or so I thought. His phone was on the kitchen counter. He'd left it charging, which he never did. It buzzed. I wasn't snooping. I was walking to get water. The screen lit up with a text from Kyle from work. Last night was insane. I can still feel you. Delete this. Marcus didn't have a coworker named Kyle. I'd met every person on his sales team at 3 separate company events. There was no Kyle. My hands went cold, not figuratively. The temperature dropped out of my fingers like blood retreating from an injury. I stood in that kitchen for maybe 90 seconds, holding a glass of water I never drank, reading those 16 words over and over. And then I did something that surprised me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't wake him up. I picked up his phone, typed in 1114, and opened the messages. Kyle from work had a profile picture. It was a stock image of a sunset, the kind that comes preloaded on a Samsung. But the messages weren't from Kyle. They were from Keisha. He'd saved her under a fake name, which meant this wasn't impulsive. This was infrastructure. I scrolled for 45 minutes, sitting on the kitchen floor, back against the refrigerator, the tile cold through my pajama pants. The messages went back 22 months. Before the proposal, before the ring, before I signed the lease on our shared apartment. Keisha had sent him a voice memo on March 3rd, 2023. I put in my AirPods and pressed play. Her voice, breathy, laughing. I can't believe she doesn't know. Sometimes I feel bad. Then I remember how she just lets things happen. She'd never fight for you the way I would. Marcus's reply, voice memo, March 3rd. Denise is safe. You're the one I want. But she pays for everything and doesn't ask questions. You gotta respect the setup. You gotta respect the setup. He called our relationship a setup. And Keisha, my Keisha, the girl who cried at my grandmother's funeral, she laughed on the recording. A little giggle, like he'd told a joke at brunch. I sat on that kitchen floor until 1:17 a.m. And somewhere around 12:45, something shifted in me. Not a snap, not an explosion. More like a lock clicking into place. The quiet sound of a woman deciding she's done performing. I put his phone back on the charger. I went to bed. He was snoring. I lay next to him in the dark, and for the first time in our relationship, I saw him clearly. The charming man at the cookout was a costume. First time underneath was someone who'd looked at my kindness, my loyalty, my silence, and thought, this is someone I can use. The next morning, he kissed me goodbye and said, love you, babe. Don't work too hard. Then he winked. I smiled, said, love you too. Made him coffee in his favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle he refused to throw away. And then I sat down at my desk and opened a new folder on my laptop. I named it After the Burning, same name as my podcast dream. But this time, it wasn't a creative project. It was a war plan. Over the next 2 weeks, I accessed Marcus's phone 4 more times while he slept. I didn't confront, I didn't hint, I didn't change a single behavior. I was the same Denise, accommodating, quiet, smiling, passing the gravy. The table thought I'd folded. I hadn't folded. I was counting cards. With my audio engineering training, I knew exactly what to capture and how to capture it cleanly. I downloaded every voice memo between Marcus and Keisha, 14 total, spanning 19 months. I cleaned the audio, reduced background noise, normalized the levels, isolated the vocal tracks. Studio quality betrayal. If you're going to expose someone, the fidelity matters. I also screenshotted every text conversation, 412 messages. I organized them chronologically in a spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, what Marcus told me that day. Column C, what he texted Keisha that day. The contrast was almost funny. Almost. June 18th. Marcus told me, I'm working late, babe. Big client dinner. Marcus texted Keisha. She thinks I'm at dinner. Your place in 20. Wear the thing. July 4th. Marcus and I watched fireworks at Dorothea Dix Park. He held my hand, posted a photo with the caption, My Forever. At 11:47 p.m., he texted Keisha, You're the only firework I need. Corny but true LOL. August 9th. Marcus told me he was at his friend Deshawn's watching the preseason game. He texted Keisha. I told her Deshawn's. I'm outside your apartment. Buzz me in. I cataloged all of it. 14 voice memos, 412 texts, 1 spreadsheet, 1 flash drive. I backed it up in 3 locations. My studio hard drive, a cloud folder with 2-factor authentication, and a physical copy in a fireproof lockbox I kept at Uncle Vernon's house. Because here's the thing about people pleasers who finally snap. We don't yell, we document. Meanwhile, the wedding planning continued. And it got worse. Late July, Marcus and I went to taste cakes at a bakery on Hillsborough Street. The baker, a lovely woman named Francine with flour perpetually on her forearms, presented 4 options. I wanted the lemon elderflower. Marcus wanted the red velvet. Normal couple disagreement. Except Marcus didn't disagree like a normal person. He looked at Francine and said, Denise always picks the weird option. Just go with the red velvet. She'll come around. She always does. Then he laughed and put his hand on my back like he was guiding a child. Francine looked at me. I looked at the lemon elderflower. I said, Red velvet is fine. We got the red velvet. $1,400. I paid. In August, we had the engagement party. Keisha was there, of course. She gave a speech. She stood up in front of 60 people, my family, my coworkers, Marcus's team, and said, Denise is the sister I never had. Marcus, you better take care of her. She deserves the world. Marcus squeezed my hand under the table. Keisha made eye contact with me and teared up. She was wearing the gold bracelet I'd given her for her 30th birthday. The one that cost me $280 at a jeweler on Fayetteville Street. I smiled, clapped, hugged her afterward, whispered, I love you, in her ear. And I already knew everything. I'd known for 6 weeks. But the wedding was still 10 weeks away, and I had engineering to do. That's when I brought in Ollie Trask, Marcus's best man. That's 29 years old, a physical therapist with forearms like bridge cables and the moral compass of a saint. Ollie and Marcus had been friends since college at NC State, but here's what Marcus didn't know. Ollie couldn't stand him anymore. Hadn't been able to for over a year. Ollie came to me in early September. We were at a Panera off Capitol Boulevard. I was eating a broccoli cheddar soup. He was stress eating a cookie the size of his palm. And he said, Denise, I need to tell you something, and I need you to not hate me for waiting this long. I already know, I said. His cookie stopped halfway to his mouth. You, what? Marcus and Keisha. I've known since June. Ollie put the cookie down, rubbed his face with both hands. I saw them in April, at a parking garage downtown. I confronted Marcus, and he told me it was a one-time thing. It was over. He was committed to you. I believed him. Then I saw Keisha's car at his office twice in August, and I knew he lied. He did lie. Denise, I'm so sorry. I should have... Ollie, I don't need an apology. I need a best man. He stared at me. You still want to go through with the wedding? I took a spoonful of soup. Oh, we're absolutely going through with the wedding. There was a silence. Then Ollie, God bless that man, leaned back in his chair and said, What do you need me to do? I need you to give a toast, and I need you to let me write it. The next 6 weeks were the most focused period of my professional life. By day, I produced podcasts. By night, I produced my husband's public autopsy. Here's what I built. The wedding venue was the Arbor at Linden Hills, a renovated barn-style event space in Charlotte. Capacity, 250. They had a house PA system, 4 mounted speakers, a Bluetooth receiver, and a basic mixer. Standard setup for a wedding DJ. I visited the venue 3 times during planning walkthroughs. Each time, I mapped the speaker layout, tested the Bluetooth range, and identified every wireless access point. On my 3rd visit, September 28th, 16 days before the wedding, I installed a secondary Bluetooth receiver behind the bar's decorative paneling. It was the size of a deck of cards. I paired it to the venue's main system using a frequency I set up myself. I could now route any audio from any Bluetooth-enabled device within 40 feet directly to every speaker in the building, overriding the DJ's feed. I also placed 2 portable Bose SoundLink speakers, one under the sweetheart table, one under the gift table, connected to the same channel. Total coverage, no dead zones. The Spider-Man lunchbox was Ollie's idea. He said we needed a container that nobody would open or question. At a wedding. Nobody touches a kid's lunchbox, he said. They assume some flower girl left it. Inside, a Bluetooth transmitter, the flash drive with the audio files, and a pre-programmed playback sequence. I selected the 3 most damaging voice memos. I cleaned them, amplified the vocals, and arranged them in a sequence designed for maximum emotional impact. Track 1, Marcus saying, "Denise doesn't even know what real passion feels like. You ruined me for her, Keisha." Track 2, Keisha saying, "I can't believe she doesn't know. Sometimes I feel bad. Then I remember how she just lets things happen." Track 3, Marcus saying, "Denise is safe. You're the one I want. But she pays for everything and doesn't ask questions. You gotta respect the setup." Total runtime, 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Enough to end 2 relationships, 1 friendship, and 1 reputation, with time left over for the room to process what they just heard. Ollie's toast was the delivery system. He'd stand up, give a warm, funny, standard best man speech, the kind everyone expects. Then, at the 2-minute mark, he'd pause and say, "But I think Marcus can say it better than I can." He'd gesture toward the speakers, and I'd press play from my phone, which was connected to the hidden Bluetooth receiver via an app I configured myself. The DJ would think it was a technical glitch. By the time anyone figured out what was happening, the audio would be 30 seconds in, and you can't unhear 30 seconds of your groom calling his bride a financial setup. Remember when I mentioned Uncle Vernon's church, the PA rewiring? That wasn't a coincidence in my life. That was training. I just didn't know what for until I needed it. And remember the notebook in the drawer? After the burning, I pulled it out the night before the wedding. Wrote 1 sentence on the first blank page. Episode 1, My Wedding. Now let me tell you about October 14th, 2023. The weather was absurd. 78 degrees in mid-October, the sky so blue it looked digital. The arbor at Linden Hills was wrapped in white hydrangeas and string lights. My mother cried when she saw me in my dress. Terrence walked me down the aisle because our father didn't earn that right. Marcus stood at the altar in a navy suit, looking like every woman's Pinterest board come to life. Keisha was to my left, my maid of honor. She'd done my makeup that morning, sitting on the bathroom counter of the bridal suite at the Hampton Inn, blending my foundation and telling me I was literally glowing. Her hands were steady, practiced. The hands of a woman who'd been lying to my face for 2 years and had gotten comfortable in it. The ceremony was beautiful. I'll give it that. The vows were beautiful. Marcus cried during his. I watched a tear roll down his cheek and thought, that's a performance. You're performing, and you're good at it. But I'm better. 211 guests. And you're good at it. Marcus's parents, his father Gerald, a deacon at First Baptist, and his mother Lorraine, who once told me I'd be a 10 if I just tried a little harder. Marcus's boss, Garrett, at table 2 with his wife. Keisha's fiancé, Darnell Baptiste, at table 6, 3 feet from the woman he thought was faithful to him. My mother, my brother, my Uncle Vernon, my co-workers from Lark and Signal. Every person who mattered to either of us gathered in one room, eating $68 a plate chicken marsala that I paid for. Dinner went smoothly. The DJ played Stevie Wonder during courses. People laughed, drank, clinked glasses. Marcus held my hand under the table and whispered, "Best day of my life." "Mine too," I said. And I meant it. Just not the way he thought. At 8:47 p.m., Ollie stood up. He tapped his glass. The room quieted. He was sweating. I could see the sheen on his forehead from across the room, but his voice was steady. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ollie. Marcus and I have been friends since freshman year at State. I've seen this man at his best and his worst. I was there when he bombed his first sales pitch so badly the client asked if he was lost. I was there when he locked his keys in his car at a Waffle House at 3 a.m. And I was there when he met Denise. Laughter, warmth, the room was leaning in. "Denise," Ollie said, turning to me, "you are the most patient, generous, hard-working woman I've ever met. You deserve a love that matches what you give. You deserve honesty." He paused. The pause was 3 seconds too long. I watched Marcus's smile flicker just a millimeter, just a shadow behind the eyes. But I think Marcus can say it better than I can. Ollie gestured toward the speakers. The DJ looked confused. Ollie nodded at me. I pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the room. Every speaker, every corner. Clean, clear, unmistakable. Because I'd spent 2 months making sure it would be. Denise doesn't even know what real passion feels like. You ruined me for her, Keisha. The room didn't gasp. That's what movies get wrong. In real life, when something truly shocking happens, there's no collective gasp. There's silence, a deep, confused, cellular silence, like every person in the room is individually trying to process whether they actually heard what they just heard. Marcus's fork hit his plate. The sound was louder than it should have been. Then Keisha's voice. I can't believe she doesn't know. Sometimes I feel bad. Then I remember how she just lets things happen. Keisha's face. I'll remember it forever. The color left her skin in a wave, from her forehead to her chin, like someone pulled a shade down. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Darnell, her fiancé, sitting right next to her, turned to look at her with an expression I can only describe as a man watching a building collapse. Then the third track. Marcus again. Denise is safe. You're the one I want. But she pays for everything and doesn't ask questions. You gotta respect the setup. 4 minutes and 17 seconds. That's how long it took. Marcus shot up from his chair. Turn it off! Turn it off! He was looking at the DJ, who was frantically checking his equipment, hands shaking, finding nothing wrong, because the audio wasn't coming from his system. It was coming from mine. Marcus looked at me. His face was a demolition site, charm crumbling, confidence collapsing inward, the scaffolding of his public persona buckling under the weight of his own recorded voice. Denise, he said. Denise, that's not, you don't understand. You gotta respect the setup, I said. 6 words. I threw his own language back at him like a grenade with the pin already pulled. Lorraine, his mother, the deacon's wife, the woman who told me I should try harder, was standing. Her crab cake was on the floor. She was looking at Marcus with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Shame. She was looking not for me, for herself, for raising him. Gerald, his father, didn't stand. He put his napkin on the table, folded it once, and closed his eyes. A deacon processing that his son had just been exposed as a fraud in front of his entire congregation's social circle. Garrett, Marcus's boss, was already texting. I found out later he was messaging HR. Marcus had used company events as cover stories for meeting Keisha, client dinners that never happened, conference trips that were weekend getaways. Garrett had signed off on expense reports that were fiction. And Darnell stood up from table 6, looked at Keisha and said, loudly enough for the surrounding tables to hear, 22 months? We've been together for 3 years, Keisha. 3 years. Keisha started crying. Darnell, please, let me explain. In front of all these people? Nah. He pulled the ring box from his jacket pocket. He'd been planning to propose at the wedding after party, I learned later, and set it on the table, gently. That gentleness was more devastating than any anger could have been. Marcus was moving toward me now, navigating between tables, his hands out like he was approaching a wild animal. Babe, listen. We can talk about this. That audio, it's old, it's out of context, I can explain. It's time-stamped, Marcus. March 3rd, 2023, 7 weeks before you proposed to me. Would you like me to play the others? There are 11 more. The color left his face. Same wave as Keisha, forehead to chin. He looked at Ollie. Ollie was still standing at the mic, silent, arms crossed. You, Marcus said to Ollie, you were in on this? I tried to talk to you, Ollie said quietly. In April, you lied to my face. Marcus looked back at me. His mouth moved, but nothing came out for a moment. Then, you planned this whole wedding. You planned this. I planned a beautiful wedding, Marcus. You planned everything else. I picked up my bouquet from the sweetheart table. White peonies. $340. I negotiated the price down from $400 because the florist liked me. I walked toward the exit. My mother was standing by the door. She was crying, but not the sad kind, the proud kind, the fierce kind, the kind of crying a woman does when she watches her daughter choose herself for the first time. She grabbed my hand as I passed, squeezed once, let go. Terrence was behind her, holding my overnight bag. He'd packed it that morning, per my instructions. Change of clothes, toiletries, car keys, the fireproof lockbox from Uncle Vernon's house containing every piece of evidence, and a folder of legal documents my attorney had prepared 2 weeks prior. My attorney. Rashida Okonkwo. I'd hired her in August, the same week I installed the first Bluetooth receiver at the venue. Rashida specialized in family law with an emphasis on fraud and financial misrepresentation. She'd already drafted an annulment petition based on the evidence of premarital infidelity and financial deception. In North Carolina, if you can prove the marriage was entered into based on fraud, annulment is faster and cleaner than divorce. Marcus had signed a prenup. He hadn't read it carefully. He'd laughed and said, "Babe, we don't need this. I trust you." Rashida had included a clause stipulating that, in the event of proven infidelity predating the marriage, all wedding expenses would be reimbursable by the offending party. Marcus owed me $39,950 before we'd been married 6 hours. I walked out of the arbor at Linden Hills at 9:14 p.m. The sky was dark. The string lights were still on. Through the windows I could see the chaos. People standing, talking over each other, Marcus with his hands on his head, Keisha being escorted out a side door by a bridesmaid who looked like she'd rather be carrying biohazard waste. I got into my Honda Accord. Terrence had left a Tupperware container on the passenger seat. Inside, 2 slices of the wedding cake, the red velvet container, the one Marcus chose. I ate a slice in the parking lot, engine running, October air coming through the cracked window. It was good cake, honestly. Francine knew what she was doing. What happened next unfolded like dominoes falling in slow motion. Within 72 hours, Marcus called me 41 times. I answered once. He was crying. "Denise, please, I love you. It was a mistake. She meant nothing." She meant nothing, but it lasted 22 months? That's not a mistake, Marcus. That's a commitment. He tried the guilt approach. "You humiliated me in front of my family. My parents won't speak to me." "You humiliated yourself. I just provided the audio." He tried the legal threat. "My buddy's a lawyer. He says what you did is illegal. Recording without consent. North Carolina is a one-party consent state, Marcus. I'm the one party. And those voice memos were sent willingly to your phone, which was on a shared account that I pay for. Your buddy should check the statute before he bills you." Silence. Then, "I don't even know who you are." "That's the first honest thing you've said in 2 years." Within 2 weeks, Keisha's fiancé Darnell moved out of their shared apartment. He took the dog, a corgi named Biscuit, that Keisha loved more than most humans. He posted nothing on social media, just went silent. That silence was louder than any public statement. Within a month, Marcus's position at his company was restructured. Garrett, his boss, couldn't fire him for personal misconduct, but the fraudulent expense reports, the client dinners that were actually dates with Keisha, gave HR everything they needed. Marcus went from regional sales manager to unemployed, with a $63,000 salary vanishing overnight. Lorraine, his mother, sent me a text. 1 line. "I'm sorry I ever made you feel small." I didn't respond. Some apologies arrived too late to matter and too early to trust. Keisha tried to contact me once. A voicemail left at 2:38 a.m., 3 weeks after the wedding. She was crying so hard I could barely make out the words. "Denise, I'm so sorry. I don't know why. Please, we've been friends since we were 9. I listened to the whole thing. Professional habit. Then I deleted it. My mother asked me if I felt guilty. We were sitting at her kitchen table, the same table where I'd done homework as a kid, eating leftover butter beans because some things don't change and shouldn't. "Do I feel guilty?" I repeated. "You could have just left him quietly. You didn't have to do it in front of everyone." I put my fork down. "Mom," he introduced me to his VP and called my career cute. His mother told me to my face I wasn't good enough. Keisha held my hand at Grandma Opal's funeral and then went home and slept with my fiancé. They all did this in front of people. They just did it slowly over 2 years, in doses small enough that I was supposed to swallow them and say thank you. My mother looked at me for a long time. Then she said, "Your grandmother would have been proud. Don't show your hand until the table thinks you folded." The annulment was finalized in January 2024. Rashida was surgical. Marcus's attorney, a guy named Clint who looked like he'd gotten his law degree from a cereal box, tried to argue that the prenup was signed under duress. Rashida produced the text Marcus sent his friend Deshaun the night he signed it. "Denise wants a prenup, LOL. Easy. She's too nice to put anything wild in it." Signed without reading, haha. The judge read that text, looked at Marcus, and said, "Motion denied. Marcus owed me $39,950 in wedding expense reimbursement. He's on a payment plan, $1,100 a month. He'll be paying me for the next 3 years. Every month on the 1st, a direct deposit hits my account from the man who called our relationship a setup. The financial irony tastes better than any red velvet cake. As for me, 3 months after the annulment, I rented a one-bedroom apartment in the Oakwood neighborhood of Raleigh, 2 miles from where I grew up. It's small. The kitchen has exactly four cabinet doors, and one of them sticks. The bathroom fan sounds like a helicopter with asthma, but it's mine. Every square foot of it is mine. I pulled the notebook out of the drawer. After the burning, I opened it to the page where I'd written Episode 1, My Wedding. I started recording. Not the wedding story. Not yet. I started with other women's stories. Women who'd been gaslit, financially drained, publicly diminished, and quietly rebuilt. I recorded 5 episodes in my closet using a Shure SM 7B microphone and a portable interface, the same equipment I use at the studio. I edited them at 2 a.m., the same hours I used to spend cataloging Marcus's lies. The podcast launched in April 2024. By June, it had 40,000 downloads. By August, 200,000. Production company in Los Angeles reached out about a potential partnership. The show I dreamed about since I was 22, the one Marcus called cute, was becoming real. Last Tuesday, I was sitting on my couch, a secondhand IKEA piece I bought for $120 off Facebook Marketplace, drinking coffee at 6:47 a.m., the same time Marcus used to text me, "Good morning, beautiful." My phone buzzed. It wasn't Marcus. It was a listener named Tanya from Fayetteville who'd sent a voice message. "Denise, your show made me leave. I'm out. I'm safe. Thank you." I played it twice. Then I sat in my small apartment with the sticking cabinet door and the asthmatic bathroom fan, and I cried. Not the crying I did on the kitchen floor in June. Not the silent swallowing kind. The real kind. The kind that comes when you finally recognize your own voice, and it sounds nothing like the woman who used to pass the gravy. My grandmother Opal passed away in 2019. She never met Marcus. She never saw the wedding, the exposure, the podcast. But sometimes when I'm editing a particularly raw episode late at night, I hear her voice in the back of my head, clear as a studio recording. "Don't show your hand until the table thinks you folded." I showed my hand, Grandma, at the exact right moment. And the table never saw it coming.